Chapter 3107, Yi Yuan's Doom. Chapter 3107, Yi Yuan's Doom. Above the void, a long spear was akin to a dragon, blowing away the firmament. Saint Force surged on Yang Qing's body, fighting with a blood race great beyond powerhouse until they were locked in a struggle. Qi Hu, you're called the blood race's #1 genius. You're even a level above blood promise. Looking at it now, it's also nothing more than this. I only dare call myself the #2 genius in the human race. Yang Qing sent out a spear, directly sending Qi, who flying as he said with a loud laugh. At the opposite side, Qi, who had a livid expression. After 3 years of fierce battles, Yang Qing went from an unknown ordinary hegemon to becoming a great beyond realm mighty expert. Yang Qing was forever that crazy. During these 3 years, he experienced countless narrow escapes from death, stimulating his potential to the extreme. Coupled with grand bright jade, complete heaven's heaven and earth spiritual energy growing richer, with each Pa-S, Sing-Day, his cultivation realm also rose rapidly, breaking through the fetters of hegemon realm, becoming the 9th great beyond. At that time, Qi, who could not even be bothered to glance at Yang Qing because he was the blood race's #1 genius. This #1 genius was not blood promise, that kind of person who had not grown up yet. He was a true genius. Qi, who was the blood race's youngest great beyond realm powerhouse. But in a short 3 years, this CKY to the extreme fellow in front of him actually slapped his face. He exchanged blows with Yang Qing, but was firmly suppressed by him, beaten until he was depressed. He naturally knew who was humanity's #1 genius that Yang Qing was talking about. Yi Yuan. Ever since going into closed seclusion 3 years ago, there had been no news about that guy until now. But the entire 33 heavens had his legend. It was him who overcame the raging tides with his power alone, completely reversing the 33 heavens war situation. During these 3 years, Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven's army went on a punitive expedition, walking all over the 33 heavens, rescuing countless living beings. And Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven's army was also like a rolling SOBLL, growing larger as it rolled. The Blood Race army had numerous powerhouses, far exceeding that of Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven. But Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven's army did not have the desire to linger in battle. Their objective was to save people. And Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven also became the 33 heavens' final barrier. When countless powerhouses received the news, they swarmed over here one after another. After experiencing the initial most chaos, the Blood Race army gave up on fighting with divided forces and concentrated all of their military power on attacking Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven. But outside of the Blood Race's expectations, Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven's boundary wall was STURDY to the extreme. With great beyond powerhouses defending, they actually failed to invade. They suffered a huge loss instead. As the commander-in-chief, Yi Shui was depressed to the extreme. He could not figure it out, even after racking his brain. When did the lowest level plane, Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven, become so STURDY? After paying an extremely heavy price, the Blood Race finally opened up a hole in the boundary wall. Hence, a drawn-out seesaw battle unfolded between both sides, all the way until now. However, the terrifying thing was that Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven's boundary wall seemed to show signs of growing STURDY the more they fought. The instigator of all these was naturally the Chaos Heavenly Spirit List. After engaging in fierce battles for a long time, the power of wills gathered on the Chaos Heavenly Spirit List also grew stronger and stronger. Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven's boundary wall had a special characteristic. It was extremely averse to the Blood Race. In contrast, when other races entered it, there were not many restrictions. Therefore, Grand bright jade, complete heaven, also became the final fortress of all the heavens and myriad races. Those remnant forces that survived entered grand bright jade, complete heaven, one after another. Over 3 years, grand bright jade, complete heaven's combat power grew stronger, facing the arrogant Yang Qing, Qi who burned with fury and said with a cold smile, "Number one genius? Someone that's abandoned by hegemon is also worthy of being called a genius? Ha ha, talk again, after he overcomes the tribulation of hegemon." Yang Qing followed up with another spear and said, "A frog at the bottom of a well. The heaven can't stop Yi Yuan's path of breakthrough too." Qi, who was indifferent, and said, "Is that so? This seat will be watching right here, watching how he transcends the tribulation." Ha ha ha. Also, progenitor might come into being at any time. When progenitor comes into being, even if he got lucky and transcended the tribulation of hegemon, it will be a road that led to death too. Before Yang Qing could speak, Yi Shue's loud laughter came over. Ha ha ha. It looks like you all are still holding on to hope in your hearts. It's impossible for Yi Yuan to successfully overcome his tribulation. Don't you agree, Mi Tian? Mi Tian's face turned black, and he said in a solemn voice, "If it was someone else, there's definitely no hope. But he's Yi Yuan." Yi Shue laughed loudly again when he heard that and said, "You're deceiving yourself as well as others. Actually, even you yourself don't believe it either, right? If I didn't guess wrongly, you probably haven't told Yi Yuan what he'll be facing, right?" Mi Tian's expression was very ugly. This time, he did not speak. How clever were Yang Qing and the rest! They felt that something was wrong very quickly. He could not help stopping. He stared at Yi Shue coldly. "Yi Shue, what on earth are you talking about?" Yi Shue looked at him and said with a smile, "The 33 heavens have existed forever. No idea how many things that had already been buried in oblivion. Of course, no idea how many geniuses had once radiated with light. Since time immemorial, formidable divergent cultivators weren't just Yi Yuan alone." Mi Tian said in a cold voice, "Enough, Yi Shue." But Yi Shue was indifferent and continued, saying, "What? Are you not willing to tell them this bad news? But when the 33 tribulations of apocalypse is here, will they still not know? You are deceiving yourself as well as others." Yang Qing, Zhuo Bufan, and the rest, their pupils constricted, and they could not help looking at Yi Shue. They had never heard of the 33 tribulations of apocalypse before. Below hegemon, some formidable individuals could call down the most terrifying Genesis Tao tribulation. Genesis Tao tribulation was also called the final Tao tribulation. Powerhouses that could call down Genesis Tao tribulation, they were all peerless talents with extremely high hopes of stepping into hegemon realm. Their strength in the future would also grow stronger. Yang Qing, Zhuo Bufan, and the others, they all had transcended the Genesis Tao tribulation. Genesis Tao tribulation only had one wave, but it was extremely horrifying. Even if it was the likes of Yang Qing and Zhuo Bufan, it was not easy either. But this 33 tribulations of apocalypse, they had never heard of it before this. 33 tribulations of apocalypse. What the L is this? Senior Mi Tian, what on earth is going on? Yang Qing asked with a livid look. Mi Tian was silent, still not willing to speak. Yi Shue smiled when he saw the situation and said, "Everyone knows that divergent cultivators have formidable strength that far exceeds their peers. But do you all know why no divergent cultivators have ever stepped into the realm of hegemon before?" Yang Qing and the rest exchanged glances, all with blank faces. Everyone knew about this, but why was it like that? There was really no one who knew. Yi Shue smiled lightly and said, 33 heavenly planes, How many cultivators are there? Since time immemorial, it has naturally given birth to many people who go against the heaven too. And among divergent cultivators, there were naturally amazingly talented individuals too. No matter how strong Genesis Tao tribulation is, it's also impossible that no one could transcend it, right? Just take Yi Yuan, for example. Even if his Genesis Tao tribulation is 10 times stronger than yours, it's extremely easy for him to overcome the tribulation too. Could it be that there's only one Yi Yuan in this world? The faces of Yang Qing and the others also became more and more ugly. They realized that Yi Shui was disclosing a gory truth. They were not willing to accept the truth. Yeah, how many exceptional talents had there been since remote antiquity? How could there not have been a few who defied heaven? There was naturally no shortage of divergent cultivators, too. Above Genesis Tao tribulation, there's still an even more terrifying calamity. That's the 33 tribulations of apocalypse. This tribulation, forget about Emperor Sakra heaven. Even if it's a great beyond powerhouse, there's no way of transcending it at all, too. Once this tribulation appears, it will obliterate heaven and decimate the earth. Not a blade of GRA. S will survive. The power is simply unimaginable. In the legends, this tribulation has a total of 33 waves. Each wave corresponds to one heaven. Why is it a legend? That's because no one has ever seen the final face of this tribulation before. And, body can transcend until the 33rd wave at all. The reason why it was given this name was also that when this tribulation descended, it would echo with all the heavens. Hence, people guess that this tribulation has a total of 33 waves. Chapter 3108, Heavenless Revives. Chapter 3108, Heavenless Revives. Senior Mitian, you've lived for countless years. You're the most knowledgeable in your lifetime of the 33 tribulations of apocalypses that you've seen. I wonder what's the most that someone has transcended before. Yi Shui looked at Mitian and said with a chuckle. With this, everyone's eyes turned toward Mitian. Mitian was not the strongest, but he was born from chaos and had lived for countless years. He naturally had great knowledge and experience. If talking about who was the greatest authority, it was other than him. Mitian had a dark look and was still silent. But Yang Qing said anxiously, "Senior, say it. Are you trying to worry us to death?" At this point, they naturally understood that Yi Shui was absolutely not exaggerating things to raise the alarm. The 33 tribulations of apocalypse really existed. It was just that far too few were able to call down this kind of Tao tribulation. Over the course of time, it was overlooked by people. Those old men should know it too. During the last time Yi Yuan used the heaven-trampling 5 steps, Yi Shui and Mitian, 2 people, both sensed that it should be the 33 tribulations of apocalypse. Mitian also knew that it could not be hidden anymore and could only sigh. He then said, roughly 80,000 years ago, there was a human divergent cultivator called Mo Fan who had once brought down this tribulation. At that time, he overcame the 8th tribulation. During the 9th tribulation, he was buried in oblivion. This is the most that I've seen. The moment these words came out, the expressions of Yang Qing and the rest changed wildly. Mitian could be said to be the 33 heavens living fossil. In his memories, the strongest divergent cultivator only transcended 8 tribulations. One had to know that not all divergent cultivators could bring down this tribulation, those able to bring it down. They were heaven-defying powerhouses among divergent cultivators in the first place, but the strongest one was only 8 tribulations. Yi Shui smiled and said, "Senior Mitian is likely scared to demoralize you guys, so he didn't say some things." I've heard of this Mo fan before. His strength is extremely formidable. During the time he was at Emperor Sakra Heaven Realm, he had once killed a peak hegemon before too. Even if he's not as good as Yi Yuan, he's likely not far off either. But there aren't many geniuses like him. In reality, those able to transcend 3 tribulations are like the feather of a phoenix and horn of a qilin. They were very rare. In this ancestor's impression, there were only a meager 5 people too, besides Mo Fan, the one that cleared the most only transcended until the 5th tribulation. Now, do you all still think that Yi Yuan can break through to Hegemon Realm? Talking until here, Yi Shui could not help letting out a loud laugh. Grand bright jade, complete heaven's powerhouses were deathly silent. Yi Shui's words were equivalent to sentencing Yi Yuan to death. His words divulged some information, this 33 tribulations of apocalypse. Each tribulation was stronger than the last. This tribulation had no other effect than to throttle these people who went against heaven in their cradle. Yi Yuan was definitely an amazingly talented person. Even when compared to Mo Fan, he was significantly stronger too. But there were still more than 20 Tao tribulations at the back. How can it be like this? Could it be that grand bright jade, complete heaven, is really hopeless? This is really a bolt out of the blue. How can there be such a horrifying Tao tribulation in this world? Grand bright jade, complete heaven's powerhouses fell into panic and fear at once. Yi Shui's words shattered all of their hope to pieces. Grand bright jade, complete heaven's final hope was that Yi Yuan could succeed in overcoming his tribulation. Only then could they have the power to fight it out with the blood race. But now, this hope was shattered. Rumble! Suddenly, the void trembled. Powerhouses that were flying in the sky, their figures swayed. Some could not even stabilize their figures and fell down. Yi Shui's expression changed, and he said, "This power is coming from the eternal river's chaos. It's ancestor heavenless." Mi Tian's expression also turned slightly grim, and he said, "What a strong power of chaos. Could it be that he has already transcended the great beyond?" This power swept across the entire void, spreading across the 33 heavens. At this time, this powerful force could be felt everywhere in the 33 heavens. They had never felt this kind of power before. Even if it was the likes of Mi Tian and Yi Shui, they did not give them such a powerful sense of oppression too. At this time, inside the eternal river's chaos, a figure of a middle-aged man dressed in Taoist robes was currently slowly condensing and forming. Countless eternal river chaos flooded over toward him, helping him to remold his physical body. This kind of undulation spread across the entire 33 heavens through the waters of the eternal river. Ha ha ha! My body of chaos has finally been sculpted successfully. These several 100,000 years of waiting were ultimately not in vain. Old dog Samsara, wait to suffer this progenitor's wrath. This time, we'll settle all of the scores together. Ancestor Heavenless let out a wild laughter, full of high spirits, his imposing momentum billowing to the sky. He lured powerhouses from all heavens and refined a chaos heavenly pill. At this time, he actually succeeded. Behind Ancestor Heavenless, the door of eternal life opened. The 2 doors of eternal life were practically already fully opened at this time. That hollow depth seemed incomparably deep and mysterious. Gradually, Ancestor Heavenless figure completely condensed and formed, and the door of eternal life also suddenly stopped. There was just one last trace, and it would be fully opened. Arg! Yi Yuan, it's all because of you, this punk. Otherwise, this seat will definitely be able to reach the true great beyond. Before killing old dog Samsara, this seat will slaughter you, this punk, first. Amidst the chaos came Ancestor Heavenless' angry roar. Boom! It was only to see his figure move, directly traversing through the eternal river's chaos, sprinting wildly in the direction of grand bright jade complete heaven, and Astonies. Plussing huge wave engulfed everything and swept over here. He's here. Meteon's expression changed, and he said in shock, What a powerful aura. Is this the true great beyond? Shwabufon's gaze flickered as he said. Ishwe's expression was very ugly too. He did not know what Ancestor Heavenless wanted to do. Under this kind of strength, all resistance was superfluous. Boom! A large hole was directly blown open in the void. Ancestor Heavenless' figure gradually stepped out. The moment he took the stage, everyone's aura was directly suppressed, including Meteon and Ishwe. It was only at this time did people truly realize what great beyond meant. Ancestor Heavenless' aura was too strong. His gaze swept across everyone's faces. Those who were swept by him seemed to be pinned down by Mount Tai, kneeling down involuntarily. For a moment, the powerhouses that filled the sky actually all knelt down. That was submission to heavenly Tao. They could not control themselves. Only powerhouses that were Hegemon realm and above could barely manage to stand. But everyone's bodies descended one after another. No one dared to fly in the sky in front of Ancestor Heavenless. Heavenless' gaze landed on Ishwe. Ishwe's entire body felt like he was being stared at by a wild beast, his hair standing on end. Blood races. Ishwe congratulates Ancestor Heavenless for attaining great Tao. Ishwe directly knelt down without the slightest hesitation. Scram! Heavenless shouted angrily, flicking his sleeves. A terrifying force howled over. Ishwe's expression changed wildly, Saint Force running rampant on his body, attempting to resist. But before he could display his strength, he was directly flattened by a giant wave. Uffed. Fresh blood spurted wildly from Ishwe's body, and finally, with a bang, he directly exploded. But very soon, that cloud of remnant blood condensed again, letting him revive. It was just that at this time, Ishwe's complexion was extremely pale. Clearly, he had already suffered extremely severe injuries. When the powerhouses all over the sky saw this scene, each and every one of them was extremely shocked. Who was Ishwe? Being able to contend with Meteon, he was a supreme powerhouse standing at the peak of the 33 heavens. But he actually could not stand up to a single blow in front of Ancestor Heavenless. Clearly, Ancestor Heavenless was not serious at all. Otherwise, with that blow just now, he could have directly taken Ishwe's life. Humph! With this ancestor corroborating my Tao, is it your a small fry's turn to come and congratulate me? I'll spare your life. Go back and tell that lousy stone. This ancestor will be coming to find him to settle the Labyrinth Divine Palace score very soon. Finished speaking, he stopped paying attention to Ishwe and turned to Meteon and said, Where's Yuan, punk? Have him come out and die. Chapter 3109, Wills Unite Like a Fortress. Chapter 3109, Wills Unite Like a Fortress. When Meteon and the rest heard, their hearts went thump. The first thing that Heavenless did after leaving seclusion was actually to find Yi Yuan to take revenge. A hint of smugness flashed across the corners of Ishwe's mouth. With this, it did not need progenitor to personally take action anymore. Old man Meteon, this ancestor is talking to you. Didn't hear me? Heavenless said coldly. Speaking of which, Meteon was still his senior, but his strength had long already surpassed, said Meteon. There was also not the slightest bit of respect in his words. Meteon frowned and said, Heavenless, Yi Yuan is currently in close seclusion, preparing to transcend the 33 tribulations of apocalypse. Looking at this old man's face, how about withdrawing for the time being? But when Heavenless heard, his brows went up. He closed his eyes, seemingly feeling something carefully. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open, and he laughed loudly as he said, "Ha! It's indeed the 33 tribulations of apocalypse. However, it's not strange either. If he doesn't call down this tribulation, that would be strange. However, Mi Tian, your face isn't that big. Since this ancestor has corroborated my Tao and returned, I don't plan on letting him die under the apocalypse tribulations. After this ancestor kills him, it will also be considered carrying out justice on behalf of heaven." When everyone from Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven heard that, their faces changed. If Heavenless forcibly broke in, they could not stop him at all. The current Heavenless was seriously too strong. Meanwhile, Yishui and the others had gloating faces. This kind of situation was precisely what they were pleased to see and hear. Sponsored by Ring Seymour. However, they were also secretly shocked by Heavenless power. They only barely managed to perceive a trace when Yi Yuan was using the heaven-trampling 5 steps, but Heavenless could feel it without basis. Mi Tian drew a deep breath and slowly said, "Since that's the case, let's fight then. Want to see Yi Yuan?" "Sure, but you'll have to step over our dead bodies." Heavenless laughed loudly and said, "Just the likes of you all? These ants, you also want to stop this ancestor? It looks like you all still don't have a clear understanding of this ancestor's strength yet." Mi Tian said coolly, "So what? Our Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven only has heroic souls that die in battle. There are no cowards who fear death. You're very strong. This old man is far from being a match. But in this realm, no one fears you. If you don't believe, you can ask them behind me. Fight to the death without retreating. Fight to the death without retreating." Sponsored by Liberty. Mutual See more Fight to the Death without retreating. Behind Mi Tian, the voices of those Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven powerhouses were orderly, shocking the sky. Everyone had steadfast faces, without any looks of fear at all, from top to bottom. Even if their cultivation realms did not even reach Emperor Realm, they did not shrink back at all either. Heavenless had a dark expression, feeling like his majesty had been seriously provoked. He thought that having returned domineeringly, the myriad worlds should be submitting themselves to his rule. Sponsored by Walmart See More, but clearly he found the wrong target. Humph! Old thing who refuses face when it's given. Since you wholeheartedly seek death, then this ancestor will grant your Wisconsin H. Plus, Heavenless flipped his palm. A shocking aura rose up. In heaven and earth, it was as if everything was within his control. When everyone saw this scene, they were all incredibly shocked. It was just like they saw the end of Great Tao. Yi Shui's expression was apprehensive as he said, "What a terrifying power. I feel like there's nothing in this world that can surpass this power anymore. Grand Bright Jade, Complete Heaven is finished." Mi Tian had a somber expression. Under this power, he did not even have the strength left to resist. Sponsored by Samsung C. More, it was only to see Heavenless press a palm down. Grand Bright Jade, Complete Heaven's boundary wall, was crushed until it deformed. One had to know that the Blood Race army bombarded indiscriminately and only barely managed to damage Grand Bright Jade, Complete Heaven's boundary wall too. But at this time, Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven's boundary wall was seemingly about to collapse immediately. Shuo Bufan, Yang Qing, and the rest could not even move a muscle under this pressure. At this moment, they finally understood how strong Heavenless was. When this palm landed, what it killed would not only be Mi Tian. None of the people present could escape. Meanwhile, Meteon himself directly gave up struggling, closing his eyes and waiting to die. He knew that under this power, all efforts were futile. Heavenless smiled coldly and said, "Look closely. This is the outcome of provoking this ancestor. Let all the living things in this world be buried in death for your ignorance." With this palm pressing down, it was actually going to slaughter a world. But right then, inside the world, the Chaos Heavenly Spirit list seemed to have sensed something, suddenly releasing a dazzling light. When Meteon and the others saw the situation, they trembled all over, their eyes revealing the light of hope. Is this a summoning? It's calling us to protect grand, bright jade, complete heaven together. Meteon sensed that the Chaos Heavenly Spirit list seemed to be beating to some kind of mysterious tempo, and his heartbeat actually started beating along this rhythm. He immediately realized that the Chaos Heavenly Spirit list seemed to be calling something. Hence, his entire person began to enter a mysterious state. Beat, 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 beat. Meteon felt that there were more and more heartbeats sounding out around him. He and the others were actually connected together under the spurring of the Chaos Heavenly Spirit list. At this time, everyone from Grand Bright Jade, complete heaven, actually felt a kind of bloodline connection. At this moment, regardless of race, regardless of cultivation, everyone seemed to be on the same frequency. An invisible barrier rose up from the boundary wall, meeting Heavenless' shocking palm. Heavenless gave a cold laugh and said, "A bunch of ants, mantis blocking a chariot. Exterminate for me." While talking, a palm pressed onto the barrier. Boom! The void trembled heavily. That invisible barrier was directly dispersed, but Heavenless' figure was actually knocked flying out backward. Although it was not far, he was indeed knocked back. Everyone was dumbfounded with shock. A actually blocked it. How is this possible? That's a palm that controls heaven and earth. It was actually blocked. Just what did Grand Bright Jade, complete heaven, that group of people do? The blood race powerhouses looked at this scene with shocked faces, only feeling incredulity. It was undeniable that the power that Heavenless displayed was extremely strong. Therefore, they completely never thought that Heavenless would fail. Let alone would they think that this barrier that appeared from Dinos were actually really blocked ancestor Heavenless. At this time, Meteon and the others had fresh blood hanging from the corners of their mouths. The power of this palm was too great. Although the barrier blocked this blow, their minds were still traumatized. However, they were incomparably excited. The invincible Heavenless was actually blocked by them. Heavenly Saint Yi is really impressive. The Chaos Heavenly Spirit list has probably already said the domain of Chaos Heavenly Treasure. That's a powerhouse that said Great Beyond. We actually blocked it. Impressive. Really impressive. Our wills unite like a fortress. Grand Bright Jade, complete. Heaven won't be finished. Ancestor Heavenless' expression was as ugly as it could get. He thought that after he attained Tao, he would be able to summon rain and wind, suppressing the myriad worlds. Now, he actually could not even subdue a measly Grand Bright Jade, complete heaven. The big talk that was boasted just now was simply face-slapping. What a terrific power of will. This treasure can actually condense the willpower of the people of a world and protect this world. Remarkable. Truly impressive. But it ends here too. Do you all really think that this lousy thing can block this ancestor? Suddenly, Ancestor Heavenless raised both palms up. A storm that was even more terrifying than just now directly howled. The faces of everyone from Grand Bright Jade, complete heaven changed. Chapter 31:10. Two great supremacies joining hands. Grand Bright Jade in Danger. Chapter 3110. Two great supremacies joining hands. Grand Bright Jade in Danger. Clearly, that palm previously was not Heavenless' greatest strength. But this palm after that was his greatest move. The current Heavenless seemed like a monarch who was standing high above the SES, ruling over everything. When a king was enraged, corpses would float for 1,000 miles. He glared and said in a solemn voice, "This D.M. thing was developed by Yi Yuan, that punk, right? This boy is really a freak. However, it ends here too. This ancestor has comprehended chaos great Tao, and will use this world to establish awe." Heavenless turned both palms toward each other. Endless saint force poured out from his body. Some inexplicable power was actually also included in it. What this power was, body knew, but everyone could feel its power. Clearly, this was something that could only be grasped after reaching Heavenless, this kind of level. Yi Shui said in alarm and horror. That seems to be the power of great Tao. Could it be that ancestor Heavenless actually grasped the Tao of chaos? What kind of realm is this? Chi Hu smiled coldly and said, "Since ancestor Heavenless can control a Tao, our progenitor can naturally control a Tao too. However, being able to kill Grand Bright Jade, complete heaven, this bunch of BASTARDS, that would be for the best." Yi Shui was taken aback and said with a smile, "You're right. Presumably, progenitor's strength won't be worse than Heavenless. This time, Grand Bright Jade, complete heaven, definitely can't block it. Being able to watch this world be destroyed with my own eyes, it's also a beautiful thing." The blood race repeatedly suffered losses in Grand Bright Jade, complete heaven. Yi Shui even almost died here. Sponsored by Progressive Seymour. They were full of unhappiness with this world. Now, being able to watch it get destroyed with their own eyes, the blood race powerhouses were naturally very satisfied. Heaven and earth infinity. The universe seemed to be flowing between Heavenless palms. Here was heaven and earth. It was only to see him push both palms. A surge of force that was terrifying to the extreme gushed out. That feeling was really like the sky had fallen down. Sponsored by Expediacy, even the entire Grand Bright Jade, complete heaven, started trembling. The complexions of Tian and the others were deathly pale. The power of this move was much stronger than that palm previously. Could they still block it? Right when he was feeling fluid, teared. The chaos heavenly spirit list stirred again. That feeling of bloodline connection appeared once more. It was just that this time, the heartbeats that Tian felt, the number far exceeded that one just now. There seemed to be countless hearts beating in his consciousness. Sponsored by Realtor. Come see more a power of will that was unimaginably colossal poured toward the chaos heavenly spirit list frenziedly. This is the power of all beings. Tian was shocked in his heart as he said, different from the previous time. The chaos heavenly spirit list summoning this time. The target was all the living creatures of Grand Bright Jade, complete heaven, those that flew in the sky, those that swam in the sea. Even if their strength was as meager as dust, they partook. 1 P-aided 2. This was the power of all beings. At this moment, all living creatures in Grand Bright Jade, complete heaven, joined hands to resist the enemy. Tian was unable to describe the shock in his heart. The chaos heavenly spirit list was seriously too amazing. This item already said his knowledge of any chaos heavenly treasure. Sponsored by Better, help see more clearly. The chaos heavenly spirit list determined its attack according to the strength of the opponent, becoming stronger when encountering the strong. An invisible barrier condensed and formed again, covering grand bright jade, complete heaven like a giant umbrella. Boom! The barrier collapsed once again, and Heavenless figure was actually knocked 100 steps back. His expression was ugly to the extreme. Meanwhile, Ishwe and the others reined in their smiles, not daring to move, even though they really wanted to laugh. But in front of Heavenless, they did not dare to do so. If they laughed, they would die. They could only pray in their hearts for Progenitor to hurry up and come into being and help them escape suffering. Right now, they wanted to leave but did not dare to leave. They wanted to laugh, but they did not dare to laugh. How bitter! Heavenless only felt his face burn fiery hot. The big talk that he bragged about was being proven to be bragging time, and again, someone as powerful as him was actually unable to shake the measly grand bright jade. Complete heaven. Good. Very good. This ancestor wants to see how many times you all can block. The overwhelming aura on Heavenless body ran rampant once more. Clearly, he had turned somewhat angry from Imbara. Esment, right at this time, a mocking voice sounded out. Heavenless, you're only half a step away from transcending the great beyond, but you can't even take down a low-level plane. How disgraceful! While talking, an elderly figure stepped out of the chaos. When Heavenless saw the arrival, his pupils could not help constricting. Humph! Old dog Samsara, stop making wisecracks here. If you have the ability, destroy this world for this ancestor to see. Heavenless said with a sneer. The arrival was precisely Progenitor Samsara. Different from Heavenless' overwhelming aura that billowed to the sky, Progenitor Samsara was not so high profile, looking just like an ordinary old man. Progenitor Samsara's disposition belonged to that kind of profoundness that washed away the guise of the secular, making people unable to grasp. However, body dared to question his strength. Metion had a foreboding feeling. Heavenless and Samsara had a life and death great enmity. When Heavenless saw Samsara, he actually did not pounce on the spot. What did this show? This showed that he was very apprehensive of Samsara. Metion could not see through Samsara, but from Heavenless' reaction, he guessed that Samsara's strength likely did not lose to Heavenless. This was not good news to Grand Bright Jade. Complete heaven. He knew that Yi Yuan had offended 3 great supremacies badly in the Labyrinth Divine Palace. If these 2 people joined hands, then Grand Bright Jade, complete heaven, would really suffer a cataclysmic disaster. At this time, their 3-way relations, H, I, plus P, was very delicate. The current Metion could only pray that things did not develop in the worst direction. So, it's Brother Samsara. Long time no see. Metion clasped his hands towards Hegemon Samsara from far away. Hegemon Samsara and him were virtually born at the same time. However, Hegemon Samsara's talent was clearly greater than his. There was also considered some friends. H, I, plus P between him and Progenitor Samsara. Metion's thoughts stirred, wanting to borrow Hegemon Samsara's strength. Samsara gave him a glance and said with a light smile, Metion, put away your ulterior thoughts. It's useless to address me as brother here. If it wasn't Yi Yuan, it would not have been impossible for this progenitor to consider letting the person off. But I must kill Yi Yuan. Heavenless glanced at him and said with a loud laugh, "Ha! Old dog Samsara, you and I have the same idea. It looks like you couldn't transcend the great beyond either, right? You and I are only half a step away from being able to truly transcend great beyond and completely control a Tao. If not for Yi Yuan, perhaps we'd have succeeded. This enmity must be avenged. We'll settle our scores later. Why don't you and I join hands and destroy this world first? How about it?" The moment these words came out, the hearts of everyone in grand bright jade complete. Heaven thumped, yelling inwardly not good. These two great supremacies joining hands. It was simply deadly. In front of them, all ulterior thoughts became useless. Strength was the only reliance. Progenitor Samsara did not give me Tian a chance at all. Samsara gave Heavenless a look and said meaningfully, Heavenless, you're very confident. You're certain that bloodstone, that fellow can't transcend great beyond. Heavenless said indifferently, you and I have reached this realm. You naturally know how difficult this half-step is. What right does bloodstone, that fellow, have to be stronger than you and I? At the very most, it will also be a situation of tripart. 1. TE confrontation in the future? No. Completely controlling a Tao. This meant that they could become the spokesman of heavenly Tao, seemingly like it was half a step away, but it was absolutely worlds apart. Heavenless and Samsara were both clear about this in their hearts. This half a step was far too difficult. They spent countless years and could not take this half step too. Samsara glanced at him and said with a smile, Okay, I agree. Chapter 31:11. Kneel down. Chapter 31:11. Kneel down. An atmosphere of despair pervaded the world. With these two great supremacies joining hands, no matter how powerful the chaos heavenly spirit list, it was impossible to block them too. Me Tian didn't expect it, right? Today, no one can save Yi Yuan. He must die. Heavenless said with indignation. Even a powerful overlord such as him had repeatedly suffered losses in Yi Yuan's hands. He really even wanted to die. Samsara looked at Me Tian and said coolly, Me Tian, there aren't many of those from our era who are still living in this world. This progenitor will give you a chance. Hand Yi Yuan over, and I'll spare you from death. Me Tian said without even thinking, No need. This world can be destroyed, but it can't surrender. Samsara's pupils constricted, killing intent immediately rising from his body. He discovered that although those ants within the world were in despair, of them shrunk back. At this point, there was also no one who begged for mercy. He realized that this was a terrifying world. It was not hard to want a group of people to be fearless, but to make the people of a world be bound by a common hatred for the enemy and share life and death, this was harder than ascending to heaven. What right did Yi Yuan have? Sponsored by Progressive Seymour. Since that's the case, then you all can be buried in death for Yi Yuan's sake. Morning of Samsara, arise. Hegemon, Samsara raised his palm. A giant yin-yang gear wheel condensed in the chaos. The moment that giant wheel appeared, it carried the might of heaven and earth. It was much stronger than heavenless heaven and earth infinity. Even heavenless pupils constricted too. This giant will turn endlessly cruce. Plussing over toward grand bright jade, complete heaven's boundary wall. Places that it pass, said through, everything became dust. Sponsored by Samsung C, more than 10 blood race hegemons failed to run away in time, and were directly gone. What a powerful strength. I feel like my origin divinity is going to be ground up by it. Is this the secret of Samsara? The power of great Tao is contained in this giant wheel too. Ancestor Heavenless and progenitor Samsara have already completely broken away from the domain of a heavenly stratum powerhouse. Saying that they are the masters is also not the least bit overboard. The 33 heavens arrangement will be completely broken today. From now on, tripart. 1. T confrontation. No one will be able to shake their positions. The blood race powerhouses were all extremely shocked. Today, Hegemon Heavenless and Hegemon Samsara subverted their understanding of strength. Sponsored by USC, the power of great Tao was too powerful. At this time, Ancestor Heavenless made his move too. Heaven and earth infinity smashed over again. Regarding heaven and earth infinity coupled with mourning of samsara, that raging power could virtually crush everything. At this time, if it was any other plane, the two of them joining hands would be sufficient to destroy all of the planes. This was the strength of powerhouses who controlled Great Tao. Mi Tian's complexion was somewhat pale because he discovered that the Chaos Heavenly Spirit list was actually silent. This was true despair. Sponsored by Expedia C, even the Chaos Heavenly Spirit list gave up to Cloudmount. Buffon, do you regret it? Mi Tian said, haha, what's there to regret? Making these powerhouses who control Great Tao suffer a loss. It's sufficient for us to go down in history, right? Cloudmount said with a loud laugh. Dying for Tao, 9 deaths with no regrets. Buffon said calmly. Mi Tian nodded slightly and said, this old man also can't remember clearly how many years I've lived. But I feel that the years previously have all been an utter waste. Only until I knew Yi Yuan did this old man's life become meaningful. Hearing that, everyone nodded one after another. Clearly, they shared Mi Tian's thoughts. Dying this way was very heroic, but they had no regrets. Why should we rejoice over life, and why should we be bitter about death? Too horrifying to the extreme, Great Tao attacks jostled against each other and came down. Even the entire grand bright jade, complete heaven, started trembling. Crack, crack, crack. The boundary wall already started breaking down under this heavy pressure. It might collapse at any time. Yi Shui smiled lightly and said, these guys are finally dead. However, just as the 2 terrifying attacks were about to land on the boundary wall, those 2 attacks actually slowly began to dissipate. Finally, like the wind blew past, nothing was left behind. When Samsara and Heavenless 2 people saw it, their pupils constricted. In this world, who could resolve the 2 of their full power attacks so casually? This is impossible. Heavenless said in disbelief. Everyone present was staring dumbfoundedly. And, Body knew what happened just now. Even the powerhouses on Grand Bright Jade, complete heaven's side, had dumbfounded faces too. What on earth happened during this? Samsara's gaze turned intent, and he said in a solemn voice, who is it? Get out here for this progenitor. A youth in bright red robes slowly stepped out of the chaos. He walked toward everyone, but people felt like heavenly Tao had descended. That sacred aura could not be concealed, no matter what. But they discovered to their horror that they had never seen this youth before. When did such a major power appear in the 33 heavens? Samsara's pupils constricted, and he cried out in surprise, your bloodstone? You really came into being. The moment these words came out, everyone was shocked. Mi Tian and the others were shocked and puzzled. Why would progenitor bloodstone help Grand Bright Jade complete heaven? But Yi Shui and the rest were full of ecstasy. The blood race powerhouses all knelt down at this moment. Congratulations to progenitor for coming into being. The blood race will live for generations to come and unify all the heavens. The youth slowly walked in front of Samsara, an incomparably sinister and charming smile hanging on his face as he opened his mouth, and said, just now, was it you who was disrespectful to this Tao? Samsara frowned and said, this Tao? Who the H-E-L-I do you think you are? To dare call yourself this Tao? This Tao, no one in the 33 heavens had ever called themselves that before. But Samsara and Heavenless naturally knew what this Tao meant. Progenitor Bloodstone was telling them that he had already controlled a Tao and transcended great beyond. Only such a powerhouse was worthy of being called a great Tao powerhouse. Only then would they dare call themselves this Tao. This term of address also completely differentiated him from the powerhouses of all heavens. He was the G, Oh, D, who controlled heavenly Tao. It was just that Hegemon Samsara and Hegemon Heavenless did not believe that Bloodstone could really transcend Great Beyond. Back then, they were wounded almost equally badly. There was no reason that the Bloodstone was stronger than the two of them. Of course, the more important thing was that they knew how difficult this half-step was. Even if they were not injured, there was no hope of taking this half-step at all either. What right did Bloodstone have? Regarding that move earlier being stopped, it was simply because they placed all of their energy on Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven, and they overlooked Bloodstone. If they went at it again, they were confident that it would be absolutely impossible for Bloodstone to succeed. This was where their confidence in controlling Great Tao lay. Heavenless smiled coldly and said, "Bloodstone brat, do you really think that you can frighten us? Transcending Great Beyond, do you take the two of us to be fools?" The sinister and charming youth glanced at them and lightly spat two words out of his mouth. "Kneel down." At the same time, a power that originated from Great Tao instantly descended. This power of Great Tao was pure to the extreme. It was no idea how many times stronger than Heavenless and Samsara were these two people. No, wait, these two were not on the same level at all. Thud. Heavenless and Hegemon Samsara knelt down in response. Everyone looked at this scene dumbfoundedly, horrified to the extreme. These two powerhouses who controlled a trace of the power of Great Tao were actually directly pressured into kneeling. Chapter 31:14, Tao Driving Origins. Chapter 31:14, Tao Driving Origins. Terrifying pressure completely separated Grand Bright Jade, Complete Heaven, and the Blood Race. The area of the apocalyptic tribulation was extremely vast. It formed a natural protective barrier between the two. Very clearly, Yi Yuan was afraid that when he was overcoming the tribulation, Progenitor Bloodstone would deal a killing blow to Grand Bright Jade, Complete Heaven. The present Progenitor Bloodstone, apart from the apocalypse, he swept away the current era. But this way, he had no route of retreat too. Once he could not withstand the apocalyptic tribulation, the world behind him would be completely destroyed. Apocalyptic tribulation was not said for fun. This was cutting off all means of retreat, either win or die trying. Grand Bright Jade will live or die with me. Are you all willing? Yi Yuan shouted loudly without even turning his head back. "We're willing." Virtually without thinking, everyone answered. This was their only chance to live. When Progenitor Bloodstone saw this scene, his expression turned dark. Just now, he did indeed plan on slaughtering the people of a world while Yi Yuan was transcending the tribulation, interrupting Yi Yuan's transcending of the tribulation. He did not expect that Yi Yuan was so ruthless, directly tying the people of this world together with him. But that was fine. The difficulty of Yi Yuan's tribulation would be greater. Crack, crack. A few more claps of thunder sounded out. Heavenly Tao seemed to be expressing its dissatisfaction towards him. Yi Yuan's actions and conduct was simply looking down on Heavenly Tao. Amidst the chaos, dark clouds rolled. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. It was as if it was the end of the world. Noisy. Yi Yuan frowned slightly and suddenly slammed a punch out. This punch was akin to flood dragons heading out to the sea. The power of the four symbols surged forward, rushing straight up to the clouds. Yi Shui's pupils constricted slightly, revealing shock. The power of this punch was already infinitely close to Great Beyond Realm. Even if it was a supreme hegemon, they would also be one shot under this punch. Compared to the Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven battleback, then, the current Yi Yuan was no idea how many times stronger than before. It was as if heaven sensed Yi Yuan's impudence. Countless electric snakes suddenly descended from the tribulation cloud. That was the fury of heavenly Tao. The strength of these electric snakes could absolutely one-shot supreme hegemons. The two formidable forces collided in an instant. Boom! Countless electric snakes were instantly annihilated. This was not considered over yet. Yi Yuan's fist force still had plenty left in the tank, rushing straight for the clouds. Boom! The tribulation cloud collapsed with a loud bang. Before the first apocalyptic tribulation had formed, it was actually dispersed by Yi Yuan with one punch. It was deathly silent all around. Everyone was shocked by Yi Yuan's fearsomeness. Before this, the apocalyptic tribulation was boasted to the max. Everyone felt that the apocalyptic tribulation was powerful to the extreme. But who knew that it actually could not block a punch from Yi Yuan? This is also too strong, right? Isn't it said that the apocalyptic tribulation is very impressive? I feel like Yi Yuan didn't use his full strength at all. This apocalyptic tribulation doesn't seem as impressive as in the rumors. I feel the same too. I say, you guys, Yi Yuan wouldn't really succeed in overcoming the tribulation, right? The blood race powerhouses could not help doubting the power of the apocalyptic tribulation. Not that the apocalyptic tribulation was not strong, but that Yi Yuan was too casual, giving them a great shock. Yi Shui gave a cold snort and said, "What the hell do you know?" Although I am reluctant to admit it, Yi Yuan is indeed the #1 divergent cultivator since ancient times. Before close seclusion, his strength was already stronger than the MO fan back then. This first wave of tribulation naturally can't pose a threat to him. However, in the 33 tribulations of apocalypse, each wave is more terrifying than the last. Very soon, you all will know the terror of this apocalyptic tribulation. Furthermore, this first wave of apocalyptic tribulation, just now, the power already reached the level of great beyond. Can you all block it if you give it a try? Everyone stopped talking. Indeed, this was just the first wave of apocalyptic tribulation, and the power already reached great beyond level. Going further, the power would probably be beyond imagination. With Yi Yuan's strength, he could at least overcome 7 waves of apocalyptic tribulation too. This first wave was naturally somewhat inadequate. Very soon, the tribulation clouds that were scattered condensed anew. That terrifying to the extreme pressure descended upon everyone's hearts again. But this time, the pressure was stronger. What a strong pressure! I almost can't breathe anymore. You all look above that tribulation. There's another layer of tribulation clouds condensing. This is a double-layered tribulation cloud. What terrifying power of origin! I feel like the power of that origin is already almost seeping out. The powerhouses in the world were dealing with the tribulation together, with Yi Yuan. They could distinctly feel Yi Yuan's pressure. That kind of horrifying pressure was at least 10 times stronger than the one before. When Long Jian saw that double-layered tribulation cloud, his expression was solemn as he said, "Xian Taiqing, can you block this tribulation?" Xian Taiqing was a member of the Black Tortoise clan. His defense was extremely shocking, but at this time, he shook his head and said, "Can't block." Long Jian's expression became even more serious, and he said, "This is just the second wave of tribulation, and it already has such power. Those at the back are simply unimaginable." Xian Taiqing nodded and said, "The strength division of Great Beyond Realm is very vague. If we divide our realm until Senior Mi Tian's realm into 9 stages, then the power of this second wave of apocalyptic tribulation has likely already reached the 3rd stage. Even if you and I barely manage to block it, it will definitely be the outcome of severe injuries too." Swoosh! While talking, Yi Yuan leaped up and charged to the sky. Amidst the double-layered tribulation clouds, countless lightning fell down once again. It was just that the bolts of lightning this time were two bolts intertwined together, falling down with a loud bang. Compared to before, the power was simply poles apart. Yi Yuan's both hands went up. Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, for symbols divine, beasts shot to the sky. These four great divine beasts each occupied east, west, south, and north, one direction, the bloodline power in their bodies erupting. Endless saint force poured out, forming a massive barrier. That scene was spectacular to the extreme. When Progenitor Bloodstone saw this scene, his pupils constricted. He did not expect that Yi Yuan's origin of blood was actually so strong. As the heavenly Tao envoy who controlled the great Tao of blood, he was all too clear about the power of bloodlines. Yi Yuan's origin of blood was already infinitesimally close to great Tao. Furthermore, the path that Yi Yuan took was completely different from his. His Tao revolved around slaughter, the brutal air being extremely strong. But Yi Yuan's origin of blood had a striking righteous air, being upright and just. Progenitor Bloodstone obtained the four symbols bloodlines too. This also had a huge effect on him, controlling the great Tao of blood. But he could not harness the power of the four symbols at all. However, Yi Yuan could. The barrier formed by the power of the four symbols was extremely sturdy. No matter how powerful those bolts of lightning were, it stood firm as a rock. Long Jian and the others exchanged glances, seeing the shock in the other party's eyes. I really didn't expect that our four symbols bloodlines actually have such terrifying power when fused together. Long Jian drew a deep breath and said, Qing has said, Yi Yuan's bloodline power has already surpassed all of us. Only he can unleash the power of the four symbols bloodlines to the extreme with this barrier. Even if the apocalyptic tribulation is 100 times stronger, he can block it too. Mi Tian nodded and said, although Yi Yuan's cultivation realm isn't high, his understanding of Tao has already reached an extremely profound level. He's driving the power of origin with his own Tao sword. The Tao sword is his foundation. Cultivation realm is no longer important. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 3115, Lightning Ball. Chapter 3115, Lightning Ball. Boom, boom, boom. Muffled loud bangs sounded out very rhythmically. The tempo was not fast, but each hit seemed to strike people on the chest, smashing them until they could not catch their breath. More than a month had passed. This was already the 9th wave of apocalyptic tribulation. Yi Yuan, this guy is really strong. Although he's our blood race's adversary, this guy is worthy of respect. Being the #1 divergent cultivator through the ages, this title really wasn't a boast. This 9th wave of apocalyptic tribulation, just looking at it, I feel goosebumps. He actually forcibly withstood it. Only now do I know how impressive it was for that MO fan to be able to last until the 7th wave of apocalyptic tribulation. Without the slightest surprise, Yi Yuan broke the 7th wave record that MO fan made. But at this time, no one dared to look down on the apocalyptic tribulation anymore. This name was really not called in vain. This Tao tribulation really had the power to destroy the world. The important thing was that this was just the 9th wave, and the power was already unbelievably strong. Then what about the 20th wave? The 30th wave? Unimaginable. Yi Yuan lasted until the 5th wave of apocalyptic tribulation with the 4 symbols bloodlines power. Finally, he could not hold on anymore. He directly flew up and forcibly resisted the apocalyptic tribulation. During the sixth wave, he still did not feel much. By the seventh wave, Yi Yuan was clearly straining much harder. Currently, the ninth wave was already approaching the end, but those bolts of heavenly tribulation were thick as towering trees. It already made Yi Yuan being covered all over with cuts and bruises. The ninth level with 9 layers of tribulation clouds being superimposed. The power was without equal. Each bolt that landed, Yi Yuan would be directly slammed heavily onto the boundary wall. But he got to his feet immediately and greeted the next bolt of heavenly tribulation. Grand bright jade, complete heaven's boundary wall, could not block the blow of the apocalyptic tribulation. Ha! This kid is finally on his last legs. After he tides over this ninth wave of tribulation, he can't make it through the 10th wave of tribulation, no matter what. Ishwe said rather excitedly, but Progenitor Bloodstone shook his head and said, "You're underestimating Yi Yuan too much. How can someone who's qualified to be this Dao's opponent be killed by a mere 10th wave of apocalyptic tribulation?" Ishwe said in surprise, "This is impossible, right? The power of this 9th wave of tribulation is extremely terrifying. This subordinate touches my own heart and feels that I absolutely can't block it. This 10th wave, the power will definitely be even greater. How can he possibly block it?" Progenitor Bloodstone did not explain. He just said coolly, "You watch, this boy definitely still has other means." Before long, the 9th wave of apocalyptic tribulation finally came to an end. But everyone in the world started to become even more weighed down with worry. Mi Tian personally admitted that this 9th wave of tribulation, he could not pull through it no matter what. This was also to say that in the entire 33 heavens, there were only those 3 outside that could pull through this 9th wave of tribulation. Then for the 10th wave of tribulation, what kind of terrifying level would the power reach? Looking at Yi Yuan again, he was currently charred black all over, green smoke emitting from his body, his aura being chaotic. Clearly, he had suffered considerable injuries. Everyone could tell that he seemed to have reached his limits already. Very soon, tribulation clouds rolled. Another tribulation cloud condensed and formed above the 9-layered tribulation cloud. The moment this 10th wave of tribulation cloud appeared, it made everyone's heart sink. What a terrifying pressure. I feel that this 10th wave of apocalyptic tribulation will likely have a huge leap in power. Can Yi Yuan block it? Zhuo Bufan said with a worried look. Mi Tian's expression was extremely somber too, and he said in a solemn voice, "No one has seen the 10th wave of apocalyptic tribulation before. But looking at it now, 9th wave to 10th wave is a huge hurdle." Yi Yuan, Mi Tian did not carry on. Clearly, he was not optimistic about Yi Yuan either. The 10th wave of tribulation cloud grew thicker and thicker. By the time it finally formed, it was virtually the sum of the previous 9 waves of apocalyptic tribulations. Before the Tao tribulation fell, the people already felt the sense of oppression that swept through like the turbulent wind that preceded the storm in the mountains. Progenitor, the power of this 10th wave of apocalyptic tribulation seems to be a little stronger than I imagined. Ishwe said. A hint of shock also flashed across in Progenitor Bloodstone's eyes. The power of this 10th wave somewhat exceeded his imagination. Heaven's might was immeasurable. Progenitor Bloodstone had also never seen before the complete 33 tribulations of apocalypse. The 10th wave was unbelievably strong. He understood what Ishwe meant. He did not think that Yi Yuan could pull through this 10th wave of apocalyptic tribulation. Just watch. The power of this 10th wave of tribulation does indeed exceed imagination. But Yi Yuan definitely still has cards up his sleeves. As for whether or not he can pull through, It will depend on how strong his cards are. Progenitor Bloodstone took back his words previously. He was also pessimistic about Yi Yuan now. Suddenly, clusters of white, fluffy things floated out of the clouds, akin to dandelions, being incredibly beautiful. Emen, what's that? Could that be the 10th wave of apocalyptic tribulation? I have never seen such a Tao tribulation. One cluster after another, it's like balls. Lightning balls? They look very pretty, but I feel they are very dangerous. After those lightning balls floated out, they moved along with the wind, flying everywhere. Suddenly, a lightning ball floated over toward a blood race great beyond powerhouse. Its speed was swift until everyone did not react in time. In the next second, everyone was petrified. That blood race great beyond powerhouse seemed to be weathered down, directly disappearing. A great beyond powerhouse that was an overlord-like existence. Wanting to kill a great beyond powerhouse was far too difficult. Even if it was a powerhouse like Meteon, it was easy to defeat the average great beyond powerhouse. But killing was too difficult. Therefore, fighting in this war until now, extremely few great beyond powerhouses had fallen. But at this moment, that blood race great beyond powerhouse actually did not even manage to escape. It could be seen how strong these lightning balls were. Progenitor Bloodstone's brows furrowed, and he said, "Everyone retreat another 100 miles. Actually, there was no need for him to order them. Everyone already retreated in alarm and fear, hiding far away. Those lightning balls were erratic, flying everywhere. Although the vast majority flew towards Yi Yuan, there were also the ones that occasionally drifted out. Very soon, the lightning balls got increasingly more, virtually filling the entire space. Yi Yuan's face also revealed a hint of solemnness. That scene of the blood race great beyond powerhouse being killed just now. He saw it too. These lightning balls could not be touched. He drew a deep breath and said loudly, "Brothers, borrow your sword spirits to use." It was only to see Yi Yuan stretch his hand out and beckon. Countless light dots lit up within the world, flying toward him. A light sword gradually condensed and formed in Yi Yuan's hand. Swords had sword spirits. It was the soul of the sword, the people of a world. How many billions used the sword? Countless souls of the sword condensed into this sword in Yi Yuan's hand. Shu Bufan noticed that the sword in his hand actually did not obey orders, the sword spirit directly flying out. He could not help feeling shocked. He said in shock, "So, this is the ultimate profound intent of the sword of protection. My sword can feel his sincerity too. Hence, that's why it would willingly obey his call. Compared to Sword Dao, I'm much worse than him." Yi Yuan's sword of protection only appeared for the people that should be protected. Unless it reached the final juncture, he would not use the final sword. But now he unleashed it, and this move that Yi Yuan unleashed, even a Sword Dao overlord like Shu Bufan could not control his own sword. The terror of this move could be seen. Yi Yuan lifted the sword of protection, leaping up into the sky, flying toward the countless lightning balls. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 3116, Angering Heavenly Tao. Chapter 3116, Angering Heavenly Tao. Above the void, under the 10-layered tribulation clouds, a figure crisscrossed inside it, sword intent surging wildly. The sounds of explosions rose and ebbed, shocking until the entire chaos was trembling. The ball lightning that even great beyond powerhouses could not block, Yi Yuan actually completely blocked them off. What a strong sword! The sword forged with the sword spirits of a world is indeed strong. Ishwe said in shock. It's not that the sword is strong, but that the sword user is strong. His sword Dao is already not far from controlling a Dao. You can say that he's the #1 person under Great Dao. Bloodstone said with a solemn expression, without transcending the tribulation, he really would not have known that Yi Yuan was actually so strong. He thought that by controlling the power of Great Tao, he was already the strongest person in the 33 heavens. Everyone's life and death, it was but a single thought of his. But now he felt threatened. Previously, he thought that even if Yi Yuan succeeded in transcending the tribulation, he would also merely be hegemon realm. It should not be a problem. But looking at it now, it was clearly not the case. Swoosh! Suddenly, several lightning balls flashed erratically and actually headed for the boundary wall. When Mi Tian and the others saw it, they felt their scalps tingle. The barrier could not stop these lightning balls at all. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Several streaks of sword light penetrated the layers, striking those few lightning balls accurately. Mi Tian wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead and let out a light huff. Escaped a calamity. It turns out that when a person's sword Dao is to protect others, it can actually erupt with such a powerful force. Shu Bufan was visibly moved as he said, "The power of each lightning ball already surpassed everyone's imagination. But Yi Yuan actually withstood them once again." Shu Bufan could feel the conviction when Yi Yuan was using the sword of protection. This conviction was the secret to the power of Yi Yuan's sword Dao. Several days later, those countless lightning balls finally dissipated without a trace. Yishui muttered, He actually really pulled through. Where does his limit lie?" Although Bloodstone was a little shocked, he was not surprised. He had long guessed that Yi Yuan had a contingency. Nothing strange about it. According to this Dao's estimations, Yi Yuan should at least be able to overcome 18 tribulations. But once he reached the 19th, he can't overcome it no matter what. Bloodstone said, when Yishui, heavenless, samsara, as well the rest heard that, their whole bodies trembled looking at Bloodstone with disbelieving faces. 18 tribulations. How was this possible? One had to know before this, the strongest person only overcame 7 waves of apocalyptic tribulation. Was Yi Yuan actually going to more than double it on this basis? Progenitor Bloodstone's evaluation of Yi Yuan was a little too high. Of course, no one dared to question Progenitor Bloodstone. Seeing everyone's expression, Progenitor Bloodstone smiled lightly and said, "This apocalyptic tribulation, no one has ever made it past the 8th wave previously. This Dao also has no way of knowing, but now the full picture can be inferred. Although each wave of this apocalyptic tribulation is stronger than the last, the power and form underwent huge changes from the 9th wave to 10th wave. Therefore, this Dao is guessing that in the 33 tribulations of apocalypse, every 10 tribulations is 1 level. This is also to say that this tribulation has a total of 4 levels. The 10th tribulation after 9 tribulations, the power directly rose a level. As for the final 3 waves of apocalyptic tribulation, the power will likely be sufficient to destroy the world." These words made everyone's hearts turn slightly cold. It was indeed this logic. However, they were also convinced that even if Yi Yuan had exceedingly formidable abilities, it would be impossible to transcend this apocalyptic tribulation too. The 10th tribulation was these lightning balls. Yi Yuan relied on the sword of protection and survived it with more scars than danger. 11th tribulation, boundless heavenly fire, Yi Yuan still pulled through. In the 15th tribulation, it was a myriad profound ice tribulation. The sword of protection crumbled. Yi Yuan refined the myriad profound ice with alchemy Dao, bombarding the tribulation clouds and successfully overcoming the tribulation. 19th tribulation, Yi Yuan relied on the skill to refine all things, and he still barely managed to transcend it. Up till here, the power of the apocalyptic tribulations already exceeded everyone's imagination. Heavenless' expression was livid as he said, "The power of this Tao tribulation has already caught up to this old man's strength. The power of the 20th tribulation will definitely increase tremendously. This old man definitely won't be able to transcend it." Samsara's expression was similarly ugly as he said, "If not for this apocalyptic tribulation, with the two of us coming to find trouble, we probably won't be able to bear the consequences of failure. This boy clearly hasn't even reached Hegemon realm. Why is he so strong?" Meanwhile, the others looked at them somewhat sympathetically. These two great supremacies were originally two of the three most powerful people in all the heavens, but who could have thought that they broke through the fetters and acquired a trace of great Tao power? But in the end, they were directly suppressed. Now, they also discovered to their dismay that they were actually not Yi Yuan's match. From start to end, the two of them were a joke. Although the supremacies were strong, it could not be helped that they were born at the wrong time. Bloodstone glanced at them and said with a smile, "You all don't need to belittle your capabilities either. This is roughly about Yi Yuan's limit too. This 20th apocalyptic tribulation. It's absolutely impossible for him to transcend it." While talking, the 20th layer tribulation cloud started condensing. This time, even powerhouses like Samsara and Heavenless were somewhat visibly moved. Progenitor Bloodstone guessed correctly. The power of the 20th apocalyptic tribulation made them unable to even give birth to the thought of resisting. This was the true power of Great Tao. The apocalyptic tribulations previously were all origin tribulations. But in this 20th tribulation, they clearly felt the power of Great Tao. This was also to say that, starting from this tribulation, it would be the real tribulation of Great Tao. No matter how powerful Yi Yuan was, it would be impossible to overcome it too. However, at this moment, Yi Yuan's aura suddenly changed. A domineering force rushed straight towards the sky. This imposing momentum was actually not the slightest bit weaker than the tribulation cloud that was currently condensing. It was as if he was challenging heavenly Tao. Yi Shui's pupils constricted, and he said in shock, "It's this aura again. This is heaven trampling 5 steps. So strong compared to killing Blood Promise back then. This move is now no idea how much stronger. How is this possible? In a few short years, his power could actually grow so powerful." Similarly, being the heaven-trampling 5 steps he executed last time, when the current Yi Yuan used it, the power could no longer be mentioned in the same breath. In creating the Chaos Heavenly Spirit list, what Yi Yuan improved in was not just Sword Tao. More importantly, Yi Yuan understood his own Tao. This was also the reason why Yi Yuan's strength increased so much in a few short years. Great Tao commanded myriad Taos, mastering one law, mastering myriad laws. Regardless of whether it was Sword Tao, Alchemy Tao, or Formation Tao, they were all means to achieve one's own Tao. But only the Tao in the heart was the true Tao. What he wanted to protect was his home and the people closest to him, for the sake of this Tao in his heart. So what if he stomped the heavens to the ground? The moment Yi Yuan's momentum appeared, Progenitor Bloodstone's eyes revealed a shocked expression. This move was ridiculously strong, but very soon he understood. His mouth curled, and he said, "This move violates heavenly law. This should be his final trump card. The stronger this move, the quicker he dies. Watch. He'll completely anger heavenly Tao." Boom. Trampling mountains and rivers with one step, quiet extermination of all things like the night. Under this enormous momentum, Yi Yuan took a step out. This step seemed to be stepping on the sky. The 20th layer tribulation cloud, along with the previous 19 tribulations clouds, collapsed with a loud bang. This legendary 20th apocalyptic tribulation was actually weak as a kitten under Yi Yuan's heaven-trampling 5 steps. However, as if affirming Ancestor Bloodstone's words, the rolling tribulation clouds virtually condensed again in an instant, and this time it was completely different from the tribulation clouds. Previously, a fierce gale swept, tribulation clouds rolling as if it was the sound of the angry roar of heavenly Tao. Very soon, 21 tribulation clouds condensed and formed. Support RB0 and novel. Calm people all thought that the 21st apocalyptic tribulation was about to fall right away. But no, above the 21st layer tribulation cloud, the 22nd layer tribulation cloud continued forming. Following that, it was the 23rd, 24th, all the way until the 29th. 9 tribulation clouds actually condensed together. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 3117, Frightening the Gods. Chapter 3117, Frightening the Gods. Retreat. Retreat again. Under Progenitor Bloodstone's order, the Blood Race army retreated over and over again, directly retreating 1,000 miles away. Although it was very far away, those 2 powerful auras that were diametrically opposed seemed to be right in front of them. The 29 layers of apocalyptic tribulation clouds superimposed together, forming a terrifying force field that swept across all the heavens. Several low-level planes actually began to crumble. Apocalyptic tribulation. Only at this time did it really have the power to destroy the world. Once Heavenly Tao was enraged, one could imagine how terrifying this tribulation would be when it fell. Within Grand Bright Jade, complete Heaven's realm, regardless of their strength, the people were all quivering nonstop. Apart from Yi Yuan, they were the people that could feel this terrifying pressure the most. They clearly knew that if not for Yi Yuan blocking outside, Grand Bright Jade Complete Heaven would have already completely crumbled at this time, not even fowls or dogs remaining. However, at this time, Yi Yuan's momentum rose several dimensions once more. Before that terrifying superimposed Tao tribulation fell, Yi Yuan took another step, trampling the 8 desolates with 2 steps, inverting the universe myriad extinction. Yi Yuan shouted, only to hear a rumble. An invisible momentum rose to the sky again, rumbling toward the tribulation clouds. Everyone opened their mouths wide, looking at this scene with shocked faces. Was this overcoming tribulation? The one transcending the tribulation was also too arrogant, right? Before the Tao tribulation came, you actually made a move yourself, complaining that you were not dying fast enough, as if in order to prove everyone's thoughts, a clap of thunder sounded out, reverberating throughout the whole world. The momentum of this clap of thunder slammed together fiercely with Yi Yuan's momentum. Uffed, Yi Yuan suffered a heavy blow, being forcibly smashed back onto the boundary wall. Crack! The boundary wall could not bear such a tremendous force, directly having a large hole smashed out, while Yi Yuan was smashed right into the ground. Everyone's expressions changed drastically, hurrying over one by one. Progenitor Bloodstone shook his head when he saw the situation and said, "An ant trying to shake a big tree? If the ants in this world could shake a big tree, Heavenly Tao would have long collapsed. Heavenly Tao is a cage. We can only survive inside this cage according to its rules. If you try to jump out of the cage, it will wipe you out without mercy. It looks like you still haven't understood it." The more invincible he was, the more he could feel Heavenly Tao's power. shaking heavenly Tao. That was something completely impossible. Cultivators could only comply with heavenly Tao and act in accordance with the trend. Those who defied heaven, heaven would punish. Boom. Before progenitor bloodstones, words faded. An even more boundless aura skyrocketed again from within the world. This imposing momentum rose several more dimensions on top of the basis of the second step. That heavenly tribulation momentum was actually going to match wits with that 29-layered tribulation cloud. Progenitor Bloodstone's pupils constricted slightly, and he said in shock, "Impossible! His momentum has already been interrupted by heavenly Tao. How can it possibly recondense within such a short time? That blow earlier, it condensed the power of great Tao. It already surpassed the boundary of great beyond realm. Even if he didn't die, it's impossible to have any more strength to spare to this. Why is it like this?" Progenitor Bloodstone, who had been calm and composed all along, finally revealed a shocked expression at this time. This was because he discovered that Yi Yuan's tenaciousness had already exceeded his imagination. Swoosh! A figure rose to the sky, flying out of grand bright jade. Complete heaven. 3 steps trampling the lofty clouds, myriad realms gods, and fiends lower their heads. Behind Yi Yuan, an enormous phantom appeared. That phantom did not look real, but the moment it took a step, the 33 heavens actually started trembling under this step. Boom! The 29-layered tribulation cloud collapsed with a loud bang under this stomp. Yi Shui's mouth opened wide, and he could not close his mouth for some time. Progenitor Bloodstone said that it was impossible for Yi Yuan to overcome the 20th tribulation no matter what. But now, the 29-layered tribulation clouds were still brewing an astonishing attack. However, before this attack was successfully prepared, it was directly dispersed by Yi Yuan. Just what the hell was this heaven trampling 5 steps of Yi Yuan's? How could there be such a heaven-defying martial technique in this world? Progenitor, he is... The hell kind of martial technique is this? Yi Shui asked with a face full of shock. Progenitor Bloodstone was silent. He did not know either. Yi Yuan's martial technique already subverted his understanding. This heaven-trampling 5 steps, the power of each step's momentum, grew geometrically. Although the first step was strong, it was still within the range of normal understanding. The second step was already ridiculously strong. The third step just now, it already surpassed everyone's understanding. This third step, even if Heavenless and Samsara, 2 people confronted it head-on, they would be trampled into minced meat too. As for himself, he should be able to suppress it. But this was just the third step. There were still 2 more steps at the back. Progenitor Bloodstone was somewhat breaking down. A brat who was transcending his tribulation of hegemon could already trample him into minced meat with 1 foot. Who was he? He was the envoy of heavenly Tao, the controller of the great Tao of blood. When did this world become so crazy? Just as everyone was shocked, Yi Yuan's imposing momentum increased again. Heaven trampling 5 steps, each step was a layer of heaven. If he did not shatter the broad expanse of heaven, he would not turn back. Seeing the power of Yi Yuan's 4th step, the color on Progenitor Bloodstone's face instantly disappeared. Although Yi Yuan accumulated power, awaiting release at this time, he had yet to take the 4th step. But he could feel that this step had absolutely already reached his level. This was a freaking joke, right? Furthermore, the 30th tribulation had yet to take shape. What was this guy going to do? Rumble. Above the void, an enormous black hole suddenly appeared. That black hole was deep and dark, giving people an extremely dangerous feeling. The 30th tribulation seemed extraordinary. No tribulation clouds, no lightning flashing or thunderclapping, as if it was coming from another dimension. But just as this black hole was gradually enlarging, an angry cry came over. 4 steps trampling the world. I'm revered at the ends of all the heavens. Heavenly trampling 4th step, the phantom behind Yi Yuan already gradually solidified. That was seemingly Yi Yuan's clone. Boom. The earth shook and mountains swayed. More than 10 planes collapsed with a loud bang under this step of Yi Yuan's. That black hole that had just formed actually evaporated into thin air after being collided by this shocking momentum. Gulp! Heavenless, Samsara, as well as Ishwe, they all virtually swallowed their salivas simultaneously. The power of this step was utterly terrifying. Under Yi Yuan's heaven-trampling 5 steps, the 33 tribulations of apocalypse simply became a joke. 3-31 ST tribulation. See could, he really, Ishwe was even stammering when he spoke, and this sentence made everyone jump in fright. Only then did people realize that Yi Yuan succeeding in transcending the tribulation was already close at hand. Originally, everyone thought that Yi Yuan was transcending the tribulation of Hegemen. But at this point, it was completely not the case anymore. Yi Yuan's existence completely subverted people's understanding of cultivation realm. These steps were actually really meeting heavenly Tao as equals. What kind of person could clash head-on with heavenly Tao? Impossible. These final 3 tribulations are the true apocalyptic tribulations. Furthermore, Yi Yuan's heaven-trampling 5 steps only has the last step. His cards had been used entirely. What will he still use to transcend the tribulation? This is his final trump card. He's ultimately lacking by a notch. Progenitor Bloodstone was shocked and frightened. Yi Yuan's strength made him feel afraid. However, he did not think that Yi Yuan could transcend the apocalyptic tribulations. At this time, amidst the chaos, an enormous stone door appeared from the darkness. Door of eternal life. These final 3 waves of tribulation were actually coming from the door of eternal life. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A, and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 3118, The Door of Eternal Life is Gone. Chapter 3118, The Door of Eternal Life is Gone. Creek, that door that had an archaic aura and had experienced the many vicissitudes of life, slowly opened. The boundless power of great Tao poured out. Under the floodwaters of this power of great Tao, Progenitor Bloodstone's great Tao of blood was as weak as a baby. That door of eternal life, which had existed forever, revealed the tip of the iceberg in front of people for the first time. Endless darkness, seemingly sealing everything. Just what was in there, nobody knew. But without a doubt, that was a world that could not be touched. The door of eternal life inside the chaos is the source of great Tao. Looks like heavenly Tao is going to have a frontal confrontation with Yi Yuan. This time, it's absolutely impossible for him to escape alive. Seeing this power that made even him prostrate in worship, Progenitor Bloodstone could not help feeling an upsurge of emotion. Yi Yuan's power made him shocked and scared. If Yi Yuan could really transcend the apocalyptic tribulation, then he would definitely die without a burial ground. Fortunately, heavenly Tao was strong enough. Yi Yuan looked at the door of eternal life that was slowly opening, a hint of a cold smile flashing across the corners of his mouth. Boom! His imposing momentum suddenly skyrocketed. Heaven-trampling 5th step. Poo, poo, poo. The power of this imposing momentum directly spread thousands of miles away. The Bloodkins were swept by this imposing momentum, directly being buried in oblivion one by one. Progenitor Bloodstone's expression changed wildly, his sleeves waving, bringing all the Bloodkins to retreat another few thousand miles away, and Yi Yuan's imposing momentum was still rising crazily. He was actually going to match wits with that endless great Tao that was pouring out of the door of eternal life. Just what kind of monster is this guy? This heaven-trampling 5 steps is simply unimaginably strong. Could it be that he really has the strength to challenge heavenly Tao? Yi Shui drew a cold breath and said, under Yi Yuan's heaven-trampling 5 steps, apart from trembling, he had no other thoughts at all. Yi Yuan's strength already surpassed everyone's understanding. They were perfectly clear that once this 5th step came out, even if it was the progenitor, it would likely be lacking too. The enormous figure behind Yi Yuan gradually solidified. At the same time, the door of eternal life opened fully. That endless darkness was akin to an ancient giant beast opening its ferocious, gaping maws. You all look. What is that? Something came out of the door of eternal life. It's a sword. Not good. Hurry up and run. A giant sword slowly emerged from the door of eternal life. The moment the giant sword appeared, endless sword energy escaped frenziedly, carrying out an indiscriminate attack on everything in the space. The blood race powerhouses instantly fell into endless despair. Looking at the aura effusing from this giant sword, they would immediately die upon contact. Swoosh! A streak of sword energy swept out, and a plane on the Eternal River was directly split into 2. That was Abyss Pass Origin Grotto Heaven. A hint of excitement actually flashed across Progenitor Bloodstone's face. This is the sword of heavenly punishment. This Tao wants to see if it's him, Yi Yuan, who is powerful, or the sword of heavenly punishment that is powerful. Yi Yuan gave a cold laugh and roared explosively. 5 steps trampling the firmament. My fate is decided by me, and not heaven. Boom! Yi Yuan's feet stomped. The giant behind him also followed and suddenly stomped. The eternal river's chaos fell into a frenzy all of a sudden. The endless power of chaos swept up 10,000 meters giant waves, scattering everywhere. At this moment, the entire chaos space fell into tremble. When Progenitor Bloodstone saw this scene, even the muscles on his face were quivering. Trampling the firmament was not just all talk. This step was as if Yi Yuan's roar at fate, showing his outrage at heaven's unjust. This step expounded on Yi Yuan's path of going against heaven throughout his life. A shocking aura rose rapidly and actually directly faced off against the sword of heavenly punishment without evading or shying away, as if feeling Yi Yuan's actions that went against heaven. The sword of heavenly punishment burst forth with boundless radiance. The power of great Tao poured out crazily. Boom, boom, boom. The entire 33 heavens. Great Tao was in upheaval. All the heavens collapsed. This was the sword of heavenly punishment. This was the apocalyptic tribulation. Of course, those powers of great Tao that escaped were merely bringing disaster to fishes in the moat. The vast majority of the power was all at Yi Yuan here. That blooming light turned into 10,000 strands of great Tao sword light, chopping towards Yi Yuan. Yi Yuan's momentum was being madly suppressed under these 10,000 strands of great Tao sword lights. That momentum that billowed to the sky actually became slower and slower. Great Tao sword light was being depleted frenziedly, and Yi Yuan's momentum was similarly being consumed crazily. The 2 powerful forces collided, canceling each other out. The hearts of everyone present leaped to their throats, looking at this scene in tremendous shock. Uffed! Yi Yuan was overwhelmed and finally spurted out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this scene, Bloodstone, Heavenless, and the others were overjoyed. Following that, Yi Yuan's momentum was actually being suppressed. However, the two were still being cancelled out frenziedly. But the sword of heavenly punishment was too strong. Yi Yuan's figure was being pressed down bit by bit. Crack, crack, crack. Countless cracks appeared in grand bright jade, complete heaven's boundary wall. If he retreated anymore, grand bright jade, complete heaven would be finished. The world behind him could not withstand such terrifying power at all. Die, die, die. Bloodstone clenched his fists tightly and gnashed his teeth in hatred as he said. Yi Yuan desperately stabilized his figure, refusing to step back. But the heavy pressure of the sword of heavenly punishment was still pressing down on him little by little. Blood vessels burst in Yi Yuan's body, fresh blood spurting wildly. But he refused to take half a step back. Mi Tian and the rest all turned their faces over and could not bear to watch this scene. They knew that Yi Yuan was only doing so for them. No idea how long had passed either. The power of the sword of heavenly punishment was depleted, and it slowly retreated into the door of eternal life. Meanwhile, Yi Yuan's body fell on the boundary wall powerlessly, fresh blood dyeing the boundary wall red. He actually pulled through. What a terrifying guy. The sword of heavenly punishment is so horrifying. It absolutely had the power to destroy the world, and he actually blocked it. Heavenless looked at this scene with an astonished face, but Bloodstone smiled coldly and said, "So what if he blocked it? There are still the last two apocalyptic tribulations, and his trump card is already used up. The next tribulation, he'll definitely die beyond a doubt." Everyone nodded one after another. This time, no one doubted it anymore. Clearly, Yi Yuan had already reached his limits. It was completely impossible to have any more strength to block the next tribulation. Really terrifying. This guy actually transcended 31 waves of apocalyptic tribulation in one go. Originally, I thought that he could only transcend 10 tribulations. I didn't expect that he could actually last until this point. No matter what, this guy will go down in history too. Under the sword of heavenly punishment, the blood race suffered severe casualties. The remaining people had lingering fear in their hearts, shocked by Yi Yuan's strength. The door of eternal life was very quiet. It was as if it was preparing an even stronger attack. These last 3 tribulations already exceeded everyone's imagination. No one knew what on earth that sort of heavenly punishment was, even if it just appeared openly and above board in front of people like that. Half of a quarter of an hour later, the door of eternal life finally moved again. Bloodstone and the others held their breaths, anticipating this 30-second tribulation that would be dealing Yi Yuan the fatal blow. This half of a quarter of an hour, Yi Yuan finally recovered a little, and he slowly got to his feet. A giant cauldron slowly emerged from the door of eternal life. The giant cauldron was extremely colossal, covering the sky and blotting out the sun. When its body completely flew out, it actually shrouded the entire grand bright jade, complete heaven, giving people an extremely strong sense of oppression. Uffed, uffed, uffed. Bloodstone 3 people were directly sent flying by the tremendous pressure, fresh blood spurting wildly from their mouths. The appearance of this giant cauldron was not as showy a display of its power as the sword of heavenly punishment. There was just heavy pressure, crushing everything. This heavy pressure was not released against Bloodstone and the others, but they were still pushed far away and were actually sent flying. It could be seen how great the pressure was. Under the heavy pressure, grand bright jade, complete heaven's boundary wall, could not bear it anymore and directly collapsed. Space shattering, Mi Tian and the rest of the powerhouses were directly pressed on the ground, unable to move. The progenitor Bloodstone, who was sent flying, laughed loudly and said, "Yi Yuan, you're very amazing." Second, Firmament, no one has ever been able to reach your level before. Apocalyptic 32 waves of tribulation. Most likely from now onward, no one will be able to reach anymore. However, it ends here. Heavenly Tao can't be disobeyed. Prepare to die. At this time, Yi Yuan was still standing stubbornly, not willing to lower his head. It was like he was shouldering 10,000 large mountains on his back, making him unable to breathe. Facing progenitor Bloodstone's mocking, he said disdainfully, "You're merely a dog of heavenly Tao. What qualifications do you have to be barking here? It ends here? I, Yi Yuan, never resign myself to fate." In progenitor Bloodstone's view, this was Yi Yuan's last struggle. The roar of a lowly person did not have any meaning. Haha, after using the heaven-trampling 5 steps, your momentum is already exhausted. This Tao really wants to see what you'll use to defy heaven. Bloodstone said disdainfully, "Is that so? Then watch closely." Myriad thoughts, returning to position. A storm suddenly held around Yi Yuan. This storm swept larger and larger, forming an enormous vortex. As if being attracted by this vortex, countless star-like light dots gathered over here. One light dot after another integrated into the vortex rapidly, causing the vortex to get larger and larger. Back then, Yi Yuan transformed a thought into a myriad of thoughts, following the eternal river's chaos, and entering the myriad worlds to comprehend the great Tao of all life. Now, myriad thoughts returned to position, contending with heaven. That divine soul vortex erupted with an extremely terrifying energy, slowly rolling up to the void, meeting the giant cauldron. Behind Yi Yuan, the pressure on everyone in Grand Bright Jade complete, heaven disappeared immediately. Each and every one of them had lingering fear in their hearts. In front of this kind of heaven's might, they were as insignificant as ants. Although they knew that it was very hard on Yi Yuan, they could not help at all. The level was too far apart. What a strong origin, divinity power. I didn't expect that Yi Yuan's divine essence turning into myriad can actually reach such a level, Yang Qing exclaimed. But by the side, Mi Tian shook his head and said, "Origin divinity power is nothing. The truly terrifying thing is the power of great Tao. These divine senses gaining enlightenment on all life are the continuation of Yi Yuan's great Tao. He's currently creating a great Tao that belongs to him, along with the divine senses returning to position. His Tao sword would reach an extremely terrifying realm." Yang Qing was incredibly shocked when he heard and said, "A great Tao belonging to him. Doesn't that mean that he has become another heaven? Then just what kind of realm is he currently in?" Mi Tian smiled bitterly and said, "It's not that simple. This final tribulation is bound to be extremely horrifying." Countless light dots were still gathering nonstop onto Yi Yuan's body. The power on Yi Yuan's body grew stronger and stronger. Boom! The divine soul vortex and the giant cauldron finally collided together, shocking until the void trembled incessantly. And the divine soul vortex was directly weighed down by the giant cauldron. Yi Yuan spurted a mouthful of blood wildly, but he refused to take a single step back. The light dots grew more and more. The divine soul vortex also became larger and larger. In the end, it actually pushed the giant cauldron back. When progenitor Bloodstone saw this scene, he was dumbstruck with shock. This works too?" Progenitor Bloodstone said speechlessly. This was saying that transcending the tribulation until now, Yi Yuan only used half of his strength. Looking at that berserk divine soul vortex, Bloodstone actually gave birth to a feeling of powerlessness. He was no longer able to understand Yi Yuan's realm. All in all, he did not even have the qualifications to look up to him. Originally, him breaking through the shackles and controlling the great Tao of blood, suppressing heavenless and samsara, becoming an existence that was invincible in all the heavens. How glorious all these were. But in a blink of an eye, his pride was smashed into pieces. In front of the current Yi Yuan, he was nothing at all. Yi Yuan really had the capital to go against heaven. Very soon, that giant cauldron that was sufficient to destroy the world was pushed back by Yi Yuan. Little by little, just like that, the 32nd tribulation was cleared. Following that, it was the final tribulation of the apocalyptic tribulation. Thinking up to here, everyone could not help shivering. Is this the final tribulation? I'm not dreaming, right? My God, could it be that Yi Yuan is really going to slaughter heavenly Tao? From now on, Yi Yuan will govern the destiny of the myriad realms. The heavens are changing. The heavens are really going to change. No matter what the result would be, the heaven of these 33 heavens was really going to change. A divergent cultivator, provoking heavenly Tao. The scariest thing was that he was about to succeed. If Yi Yuan really succeeded, what kind of direction would the 33 heavens develop in? No one knew. Gradually, the divine soul storm completely died down. Yi Yuan sat down cross-legged, digesting the power of great Tao that gathered over from myriad worlds. Inside the door of eternal life, a giant palm stretched out, smacking toward Yi Yuan. What shocked people was that this giant palm actually had the breath of life. This was a living thing. Could it be that there are living creatures behind the door of eternal life too? This is impossible. All the heavens and myriad worlds, the 33 heavens reign supreme. Progenitor Bloodstone did not even ascend after controlling the great Tao of blood. How can there possibly be a higher world? When Tian saw this giant palm, he was filled with shock in his heart. Heavenly stratum powerhouses dominated the myriad worlds. This was the law that had existed forever. 33 heavens. No one had ever ascended to another realm. No one had ever transcended the door of eternal life before either. Even if Progenitor Bloodstone had controlled a Tao, becoming invincible in the 33 heavens, he did not ascend either. This proved that the 33 heavens were the highest level world. But where did this giant palm come from? Who was controlling this world? Countless questions surfaced in everyone's minds. Yi Yuan looked at that giant palm, similarly having countless questions in his heart. However, the power of this palm was too horrifying. He did not have time to think that much. This palm, there seemed to be someone crossing worlds and sending it over through that end of the door of eternal life. This palm was sufficient to destroy the world. Yi Yuan's gaze turned intent, a small sword disappearing and reappearing at his glabella. It was precisely his Tao sword. Yi Yuan held the Tao sword in his hand, standing proudly in the firmament akin to a god. The little bit of aura emitting from the Tao sword, Progenitor Bloodstone, actually had an impulse to prostrate in worship. His expression changed over and over again as he said in shock, how is this possible? The sword in his hand actually gives me a feeling of facing heavenly Tao. The moment these words came out, the expressions of Heavenless and the others changed one after another. Their perception was far from as keen as Progenitor Bloodstone. But these words were absolutely not fake. Heavenless said, no wonder he could overcome 32 waves of tribulation. It turns out that what he relied on is actually that sword in his hand. Heavenless' expression changed. At this time, they finally understood why Yi Yuan was so strong. Before this, Yi Yuan's Tao sword was not perfected, and after fusing with the divine senses, the great Tao that the myriad divine senses gained enlightenment on thoroughly perfected this Tao sword. The current Yi Yuan could be said to be holding a heavenly Tao in his hand. It was only to see Yi Yuan leaped up, swinging his sword without the least bit of flashiness, chopping toward that hand. Boom! A horrifying power of great Tao poured out as if the sky was rent asunder and the earth split open, extinguishing that palm like crushing dead leaves. And this was still not over yet. This sword rumbled towards the door of eternal life. Boom! Amidst the chaos, it radiated with a dazzling light. The people only saw those two stone doors directly disintegrating under this sword. This sword was sent right into that endless darkness. There was only a deep and dark black hole left there. Bloodstone, heavenless samsara, Ishwe, Mitian, Yangqing, everyone exchanged glances, looking at this scene in extreme shock. The door of eternal life was gone. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 31:19, God of Creation. Finale. Chapter 31:19, God of Creation. Finale. Yi Yuan destroyed the door of eternal life with one sword. They felt that their brains seemed to be somewhat short-circuiting. What in the world happened? The door of eternal life is gone. Then what the hell are we? Also, what on earth is he? Bloodstone looked at Yi Yuan with a blank face, muttering to himself. With the door of eternal life disappearing, the panic in their hearts was spreading rapidly. It was because this world and the past world that they knew seemed to have become different. Also, Yi Yuan, this freak, just what kind of existence was he now? Yi Yuan's brows furrowed slightly. Suddenly, the door of eternal life appeared behind him, and his door of eternal life actually flew straight into his body. Yi Yuan discovered that there seemed to be an additional thing in his Dantian area. Is this a world? Yi Yuan was rather surprised. Back when he became a divergent cultivator, world power turned into the Tao sword. Since then, he no longer had an inner world, but now the door of eternal life actually turned into a world and fused into his body. More accurately speaking, this was not a world, but a world seed. However, Yi Yuan could feel that this world seed was very powerful. It was even not weaker than the 33 heavens. And right at this time, the Tao sword in his hand actually turned into a crystal. The crystal directly submerged into his body. Yi Yuan's both eyes suddenly snapped open. His body actually underwent a complete transformation. Every muscle in his body seemed to have been reborn, feeling his new physical body. When Yi Yuan looked over toward Bloodstone again, it was like he was looking at an ant. He currently only needed a thought, and he would be able to kill the other party easily. Yi Yuan had a confused look. He transcended the 33 tribulations of apocalypse just to be able to have a battle with Bloodstone. But now that he succeeded in transcending the tribulation, he discovered that the other party was not worth mentioning at all. This was seriously too surprising. Everyone naturally felt Yi Yuan's transformation too. Bloodstone looked at Yi Yuan. His body was clearly still the size of a human, but he felt like it was as big and tall as a giant. This kind of extreme contrast made him extremely terrified in his heart. Right then, the void shook. Amidst the darkness behind the door of eternal life, 3 figures actually walked out. These 3 people were dressed in Taoist robes, long hair fluttering, with a sage-like appearance. The aura leaking out of the 3 of them gave people a vague and ephemeral feeling. It was as if immortals descending to the mortal world. When Bloodstone saw these 3 people, he seemed to have grasped the final life-saving straw. Kneeling down with a thud, he howled, "Heavenly Tao Envoy Bloodstone pays respect to 3 exalted immortals." Reporting to 3 exalted immortals, This boy transcended the 33 tribulations of apocalypse, and he attempted to overthrow heavenly Tao to make himself king. Exalted immortals, please take action and punish this villain. Although he did not know who these three old Taoists were, without a doubt, these three people were ridiculously strong. If someone could still deal with Yi Yuan in this world, it would be none other than the three of them. The three people ignored him, arriving straight in front of Yi Yuan. Yi Yuan frowned slightly, becoming attentive and going on alert. Genesis, spirit treasure, virtue, pays respect to martial uncle. Outside of everyone's expectations, these three Taoists actually clasped their hands and bowed toward Yi Yuan, their attitudes extremely humble. Bloodstone's entire body shuddered, plopping his bottom down, his entire person like he had lost his soul. The three exalted immortals that came from the outside world actually called Yi Yuan out as their martial uncle. This, Mi Tian and the others exchanged glances, their eyes full of shock. Yi Yuan was very surprised too. He even thought that these three people came to find trouble. He did not expect that they directly bowed down. Martial uncle? Yi Yuan frowned and said. Genesis bowed and said, yes, the three of us apprentice brothers administer heavenly Tao samsara on behalf of Master. Martial uncle has experienced the baptism of the 33 tribulations of apocalypse and attained great Tao, becoming a god of creation, standing as an equal with Master. We naturally have to call using the title martial uncle. God of creation. Each word that Genesis said. It shocked until everyone stared wide-eyed with their mouths agape. Only then did they know that these three people were actually heavenly Tao's controllers. And there was actually still a god of creation above them. Bloodstone broke down. What kind of existence did I offend? When Yi Yuan heard this, he was extremely surprised too. However, it was related to the changes in his body. He knew that these three people were not lying. Then what about your master? Yi Yuan asked curiously. Ha ha ha. Junior brother, I've waited 1,000 great cosmic eras for you. You finally appeared. This Tao is not alone. Before his voice faded, a figure already stepped out of the black hole. This was a young Taoist looking similar to Yi Yuan in age. But what was a great cosmic era? The moment this person came out, he grabbed Yi Yuan's hand and was very warm. Yi Yuan looked at the arrival and actually had a feeling of meeting someone with the same pursuit. Fusing with the Tao sword, his body already underwent upheaval changes and was already completely different from these people. He had already transcended life. Even if it was Genesis 3 people, they did not give Yi Yuan this kind of feeling too. Only this young Taoist in front of him gave him the same feeling. Paying respects to senior brother, although full of uncertainty in his heart, he still answered. The young Taoist looked at Yi Yuan and said with a smile, I'm called Hongjun, born at the beginning of heaven and earth. The 33 heavens world is the world that I created. You came from insignificant importance, but now you've already entered the ranks of God of creation. From now on, we'll address each other as apprentice brothers. I created the 33 heavens world and set up the tribulation of world creation in hopes that someone can tread out their own great Tao and become a god of creation. A great cosmic era is 100 billion years. I've already waited for 100 trillion years, but no one could attain godhood. Today, I finally waited it out. Clearly, Yi Yuan's appearance made Hongjun very happy. 1,000 great cosmic eras. There was only him, one god of creation, in this world. As the saying went too high to be touched, he was too lonely. Now, Yi Yuan attained godhood. He finally had a kindred spirit. When Yi Yuan heard, he could not help having a sudden realization in his heart. It turned out that this 33 tribulations of apocalypse was actually to let people attain godhood. Yi Yuan suddenly thought of something and said in surprise, "Doesn't that mean that if you want to attain godhood, you must become a divergent cultivator?" Hongjun nodded and said, "That's right. The heavenly Tao that I established is merely a form of order. Without even daring to break heavenly Tao's order, how do you even talk about becoming a god of creation? God of creation is the creator of order to begin with. Without the courage to break apart the bird cage, it's forever impossible to become a god of creation. However, just having courage isn't enough. One also needs to have sufficient strength. The 33 Tribulations of Apocalypse is another bird cage that I set up. Only by breaking this bird cage will one be qualified to call me brother. Over these 1,000 great cosmic eras, countless geniuses have lived and perished. Someone had once made it to the 30th tribulation before, but ultimately still failed. Yi Yuan was rendered dumbfounded from listening. Turns out that everything was actually all just a test, and the others were similarly incredibly shocked. No one thought that divergent cultivation was the only way to attain great Tao. Those that obeyed heaven would flourish, and those who defied heaven would die. This was merely a joke for the weak to console themselves with. It's actually like this. It's actually like this. Defying heaven is the true great Tao of eternal life. Under the void, Yang Qing revealed a look of sudden enlightenment. Suddenly, his body erupted with a powerful aura. All of his strength actually started dissipating crazily. Yi Yuan looked at Yang Qing, and his brows could not help furrowing slightly. Hongjun smiled and said, "This child has great courage." But Yi Yuan was a little worried. The path of a divergent cultivator was not so easy to walk. 1,000 great cosmic eras, 100 trillion years, but only one Yi Yuan appeared. The path of a divergent cultivator was full of thorns and bumps. A single misstep, and it would be the outcome of one's divine soul being destroyed. Of the countless powerhouses present, were they not moved? But nobody dared. 1,000 great cosmic eras only produced a single Yi Yuan. This kind of ratio made people daunted at the sight of it. Very soon, all of Yang Qing's powers completely dissipated, and he actually became a lower, lesser, sublime heaven. Everything was back to square one. Yi Yuan, Yang Qing, will be your lifelong rival. If you can become a god of creation, I can too. Yang Qing pointed at the sky with his spear as he yelled. Yi Yuan drew a deep breath and said loudly, "Okay, I'll wait for you. When you achieve status as a creation god, you and I will fight again." Ha ha ha. Amidst the loud laughter, Yang Qing carried a long spear and disappeared into the horizon. After Yang Qing left, Yi Yuan suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Senior brother, Yi Yuan has a request." Hong Jun waved his hand and tapped at the void with a smile. A beautiful figure walked straight out of the void. Seeing the arrival, Yu Mengli was overjoyed and ran straight toward her. "Two, elder sister Ling Xue, you're finally back." 2 rows of clear tears had already fallen. Yi Yuan was also extremely agitated in his heart when he saw Mu Ling Xue. His hardships along the way were actually all for Mu Ling Xue. Hong Jun smiled and said, "When you turned your divine sense into myriad, I knew that you'd be able to corroborate your Tao and become a god of creation. So, once the War of the Blood Race started, I protected sister-in-law. In addition, her incomplete divine soul is already fully recovered too. Take it as a big gift from your brother." Yi Yuan looked at Hong Jun and cupped his fists as he said excitedly, "Many thanks, senior brother." The world that Hong Jun created, he would not interfere with the operation of this world. If not for Yi Yuan, he would not have made a move to protect Mu Ling Xue. Yi Yuan looked at Mu Ling Xue and was actually speechless at this time. Mu Lingxue was still ice cold. When she saw Yi Yuan, she did not seem too agitated. Lingxue. No idea why, but when he faced Mu Lingxue, he was actually somewhat flustered. Suddenly, Mu Lingxue smiled sweetly. The whole world seemed to have melted. Congratulations, Yi Yuan. Yi Yuan frowned slightly, a bad feeling welling up in his heart. He hurriedly said, Lingxue, I'm sorry. Mu Lingxue smiled and said, You didn't let me down. Lear, big sister prays that you guys last a lifetime and never leave or abandon each other. When Yu Mengli heard that, her expression changed drastically, and she said, Elder sister Lingxue, you're mistaken. I'm sorry. Mu Lingxue stroked Yu Mengli's face and said with a smile, Silly girl, I've seen everything that you did for Yi Yuan. You didn't let anyone down. You guys didn't let anyone down. The person I know is that Ji Qingyun, who was unparalleled among his contemporaries. Not Yi Yuan. He's yours. He has nothing to do with me. One finished saying those words without waiting for Yu Mengli to refute. She saluted Hong Jun with folded hands at the lower right side and said, This lowly girl's wish is already fulfilled here. Mr. Hong Jun, please send me into samsara, and for me to be reincarnated. Yi Yuan's pupils constricted, and he said in alarm and anger, No way. Mu Lingxue turned around and stared right at Yi Yuan. Although the current Yi Yuan was already revered as a god of creation, facing Mu Lingxue, he was actually scared. Why is there a need for this? The alarm and anger turned into a bitter smile. Mu Lingxue said coolly, You should know, even if you're a god of creation, there are also things that you can't control. By the side, Hong Jun sighed lightly and said, Pray ask, what is love? Guiding people till death do them apart. What you said is right. Even if it's a god of creation, there are also things that you can't control. Sigh, silly child, have you thought carefully? Mu Lingxue nodded and said, I've thought it through. Hong Jun nodded and said, Forget it. Since you're insistent on doing so, then I'll send you off. Finished saying, a whirlpool appeared above the void. Yi Yuan could feel that life and death, samsara, great Tao, leaking out of that whirlpool. Clearly, that was the door of reincarnation. Mu Lingxue bowed slightly and said, Thank you, Mr. Hong Jun. Finished saying, she leaped and flew into the whirlpool. Yu Mengli burned with anxiety and said, Big brother Yuan, why didn't you stop her? Yi Yuan sighed lightly and said, Can't be stopped. Then what should we do? Yi Yuan suddenly beamed and said, I entered samsara. She has entered samsara too. With this, we're considered even, right? Lear, after we're wedded, we'll go find her. Everything subsided. Progenitor Bloodstone, 3 people prostrated before Yi Yuan, trembling heavily. This old man had eyes but couldn't see. Offending god of creation. G god of creation, please spare my life. Bloodstone said quiveringly. Yi Yuan looked at him. His gaze did not have a trace of mercy, as he said coolly, The wages of sin is death. I've told you, heavenly Tao won't let you off. Do you think that by controlling a Tao, you can transcend everything? This lowly one will definitely turn over a new leaf in the future and be your most loyal dog. Bloodstone said in a panic. He had plotted for several hundred years and finally controlled a Tao. He did not want to die, but Yi Yuan clearly did not have the intention of letting him off. Only to see him lightly wave his hand, progenitor Bloodstone turned to ashes without even letting out a miserable cry. Heavenless and samsara knelt there, sweat already drenching their clothes, not daring to even breathe loudly. Yi Yuan looked at the two and said, From now on, the 2 of you are confined for a great cosmic era. You're not to take half a step out. Otherwise, bear the the consequences yourself. When the two heard that it was akin to being granted amnesty, hurriedly kowtowing and giving thanks, everything settled down. Ancestor Hongjun cast a spell. The 33 heavens returned to its initialmost order again. Grand bright jade, complete heaven, became the strongest heaven out of all the heavens with a leap. Junior apprentice brother, although you've already corroborated your Tao to become a creation god, you're still completely clueless about how to create a world. You and I shall return to Great Luo Heaven. I'll impart to you the method to create a world. As for your loved ones and friends, they can immigrate into your world after you finish creating the world. Hongjun said. Yi Yuan nodded his head and said, then I'll have to trouble senior brother. However, before this, I want to make a trip back to Immortal Grove World first to go and see my parents. Hongjun nodded and said, as it ought to be / I'll wait for you in Great Luo Heaven. Finished saying, Hongjun took a step and entered the door of eternal life. Great Luo Heaven was behind the door of eternal life. In that world, only one person could live. That person was Hongjun. Yi Yuan still had many things to do here, such as reviving his own father, Ji Zhengyang. The present Ji Zhengyang had already been reincarnated. However, with Yi Yuan's ability, finding him and letting him recover his memories was naturally not a difficult thing. And the Immortal Grove World, the Yi family had already propagated into a massive family. But back then, Yi Yuan sealed the Immortal Grove World, not letting people of this world ascend. In the Immortal Grove World, Yi Yuan saw his younger sister and also saw the Yi family's juniors. However, he did not divulge his identity. Everything would wait until after he finished creating the world. In the Immortal Grove World, Yi Yuan told his real identity to Yi Heng husband and wife. Back then, he did not dare to tell his parents, out of fear, that it would deal them a blow. But now it was different. He helped Yi Heng husband and wife find Yi Yuan, who had already reincarnated, and let him recover his memories. And thus, the Yi family was reunited. Support RB0 and NOVEL. Calm after finding Ji Zhengyang, Yi Yuan was also reunited with his parents. Just like that, Yi Yuan spent a rare, comfortable 100 years in the Immortal Grove World. 100 years later, Yi Yuan brought Yu Mengli and set off on the journey to find Mu Lingxue. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters.